This is a Let's Talk Church Safety and Security microsode with your host, Paul Buckner. Hey, sheepdogs. So, something on my heart today. A friend of mine reached out to me and told me that, and it's now come out in the news since, but he told me that it was about to appear in the news that this latest school shooting down in Texas, that there was a door that was compromised. The door wasn't locked. The door was propped open, depending on which source you're listening to. So one of the things that you're going to find in securing your business, your home, your school, or your church. Now I'm going to focus on church and school. But one of the things that you're going to find that is going to be the biggest hurdle to securing it is not going to be door locks, alarms, security gates, crash this, cameras. It's not going to be all that, believe it or not. It's going to be people. And what I mean by that is complacency. And I literally have been to secure environments, key card access only, cameras. I literally have been to secure environments in my time as a civilian police chaplain. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a civilian police chaplain, and I have a strong background in executive protection and especially in the church safety world. And I've been blessed to do church safety, helping a lot of churches for a lot of years. And I've gotten to make a lot of friends over a lot of years, some of whom have written, a couple of my buddies now have written maybe a third of the books that are out there for church safety. So there's some phenomenal resources out there they weren't out there at one time in the past. So bringing this around, I have been to some really, really secure environments, supposedly secure environments that, again, key card access, you got to have a fob to get in, environments where you should not just be able to walk up and get in. And what I find an alarming amount of the time is I find that people, the personnel, the members, the staff, the family, whatever that's in that environment actually have served to compromise the security of that environment. I was at a secure facility, and if I told you what it was, you would be alarmed. But I was at a secure facility, and I walked up to the door, and the keypad access door was open, and somebody had taken a wad of paper and wadded it up, put it into the latch, and taped it over so that it could not latch, which would automatically lock. That's one of the fascinating things. You'll find there was a robbery years ago. I worked for a Fortune 500 company, and there was a robbery at night in one of their locations, and they had a floor safe, and the robbers came in and spent half the night. They got past the alarm. There were no guards. There was a small fortune in cash in this floor safe, and they beat the floor safe to a pulp unsuccessfully, and then probably while taking a break, tried the handle, and it was unlocked. I have literally seen high-end security and law enforcement vehicles unlocked and running with firearms in the seat. God bless them. I have literally seen facilities, again, with the door propped open, with the locks compromised, keypad, fob, propped open with a cinder block, propped open with a brick, propped open with a doorstop. And one of my favorites is I have gone up to secure buildings in secure environments and successfully tailgated people in. Now, I have friends that do risk assessments and site assessments. They go in and they test, they do security pen testing, and they try to get in. My buddy Matt Combs with Shield Force International, shout out to you, buddy. He is very, very good at it. And you will find an alarming amount of time that if you act like you belong there, people will just let you in. So why am I saying all of this, especially right after there was just a school shooting? Do I believe our churches and schools should be more secure? Yes. They should be welcoming environments, but they should be more secure. I personally feel that we need Jesus back in our school system, because it's an amazing thing when you have this, when you're taught that life is precious, and when you're taught that murder is a sin, and when you're taught that you should value others as greater than yourself. You shouldn't bully them, you shouldn't mistreat them. And when you're taught the golden rule, when you're taught biblical principles, shocker, it's amazing the impact that has in people's lives. Just my personal opinion. So I think we need Jesus back in our school system. possibly unpopular opinion. But we need to secure our school environments more than we have currently? Yep, absolutely. Is it going to matter if we don't change the culture of our schools? And so I'll give you a scenario that is not related to a school shooting. How many times have you seen an environment that has smoke detectors and fire alarms, and the fire alarm goes off and people go, is it real? What do we do? It doesn't matter how much you harden the physical security of an environment if you don't change the mindset of the environment. And we need to teach people things like, what does gunfire sound like inside of a building? We need to teach people to see the signs of a potential active shooter. We've got to change that of an active killer. We've got to change that in our environment. We've got to change that in our world. Because I remember years ago, I had a friend, his son was mentally ill. My friend was dying, and he asked me to take possession of his firearms while he was in the hospital. He ended up in hospice. I got the call. It's one of the things about being a chaplain. My friend was a military veteran, and he contacted me and said, "Hey, you're my chaplain too, not just a police chaplain. You're my chaplain too." And I have a lot of great friendships like that with folks who are not just first responders, and I'm honored. In this instance, it was a very ticklish situation, and it would have been very easy to go, well, I mean, I don't know for sure, but his son was definitely mentally handicapped, and I believe mentally ill, and was a really bad combination of two characteristics. He was very narcissistic and with a lot of disrespect towards authority, but even more so, he had no concept of consequences. So narcissistic might not be the right word, but he definitely didn't understand consequences, and he very firmly did not have any respect for authority. And I remember several times law enforcement calling me and saying, "Hey, will you please go over there? He's intoxicated. He's out of control. If we go over there, we're probably going to end up having to tase him and take him to jail and possibly the psych ward," which, with the way things are in our system right now, they put him on medication, they release him, the person stops taking the medication. It's a mess. It needs some attention. But bringing that back, I found myself in a very ticklish situation because I get a call from the hospice care facility saying, "Hey, your buddy has died, and I have possession of 3 firearms and about 40 pounds of miscellaneous knives, and he had told me, bring me some paperwork, I'll sign them over to you, I want you to go sell them, and then the proceeds can go to," there's a government official that basically takes care of his son's needs. And so I found myself in a very ticklish situation. I contacted the department who had jurisdiction over that area, and I said, "This is the situation. I feel like from what I've studied in the church safety world, from what I've learned alongside law enforcement, from personal experiences, I've read books. One of the things we've got to understand is church safety, and I think school safety is a big part of that too. School resource officers and other people, if you're not currently being taught some of the earmarks, which you probably are if you're an SRO, a school resource officer, you probably are being taught this. But if you're not being taught this, the books are not that expensive. Go read the books about the Columbine shooting and some of the other terrible situations. And by the way, domestic foreign terrorists on our soil, or any form of homespun domestic terrorism, is not that far out. Multiple shooters trying to go through our schools and our houses of worship I truly believe is in our near future. And I pray I'm wrong, but I believe it's something that we're going to see more of. Understanding the way terrorists think, understanding pre-attack indicators, understanding how people assess situations. Read the Beslan shooting situation in Russia. That one will break your heart. Understand it's the twin tragedies of Fairchild Air Force Base. Go read that and understand and look at the situations. Having read that book and some others, I looked at this young man. He was in his late 20s, and I understood he was a danger to himself, and he was very much a danger to others. And for a young man who had no respect for law enforcement, for any adult, for mayors, for chiefs of police, for pastors, and would have access to his father's firearms, no bueno. So I talked to the head of that, a part of the head of the administration of that department. And when I talked to them at length, they said, "Come surrender the firearms to our department. The person that comes to get them will have to prove by court order that they can come get them, and they'll have to pass a background check." And that young man was not going to go through that. And so I truly believe that we very potentially stopped that young man from having to die at the hands of law enforcement, or God forbid, at my hands. Because imagine if he had a bad day, if he mixed hard alcohol with drugs, and that might have been a thing for him, if he mixed those two things and he decided that he was mad at God and he wanted to make God pay and he showed up at our church, there was a very real chance that lives could be lost, starting with his. That is a no bueno situation. There is nothing good about that situation. And that's a mess. And I don't want to have to deal with that. We win 100% of the fights that we don't have to fight. So going back, people and complacency, the it could never happen here, that doesn't happen here, it's never happened here, that mentality gets people killed. And I remember a guy recently, I was doing security for a church, guy came up to me, "You can't park that there. That's ridiculous." And I said, "Well, first and foremost, it's the policy of the church that I park this here. I've got to keep it away from the fire lane." I said, "The big red trucks can't navigate the corner if there's a problem." And rather naively and rather brusquely, he goes, "So has there ever been an incident here?" Okay, that, dear sir, that mentality gets people killed. And I said, "Well, in point of fact, there's been multiple incidents here." He's like what? I said, "More than once, several times we've had ambulances here. More than once we've had to have law enforcement here. We've had several incidents. It's a large church that I was at. We've had several incidents here where people who are bad people have tried to do bad things, and there was actually a man arrested on that campus on federal warrants." "Oh, okay." And I said, "So we try to keep the fire lane clear because it could just be a medical call. But at the end of the day, they might send a big red truck because that's the closest vehicle to us, and a lot of those firefighters are EMTs and paramedics. So you're not necessarily going to get a cute little ambulance. You might get a big old red truck." And the little vehicle that he was complaining about being parked where it was, there was a very real chance that fire truck could go, "Oopsie," and run right through that thing to get to what they needed to get to. So the complacency that it won't happen here gets people killed. And that's one of the things that we've got to change in our culture. We've got to change that with our families. We've got to change that with our churches. We've got to change that with our schools and our places of business. So I hope this has blessed you. Remember to pray for the innocents, the families that have been impacted, where they've had family members harmed and they've had lives lost. But while this is a raw subject, and while people are talking about this, we need to start talking about ending the complacency. And I know that's tough because it's such a human thing. It's such a thing for us as humans because we get so up in air after something happens, and then we just sort of settle back into our complacency. And we need to, without being paranoid, we need to have our head on a swivel. So, as always, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you. Remember Semper Disciplina, that lifestyle of discipline training. It's Paul Buckner, that crazy civilian police chaplain, that crazy church safety guy. God bless. If you enjoyed this microsode, check out the video and audio versions of the Let's Talk Church Safety and Security podcast.